My sister kept mocking my infertility, until I found out she was secretly using my stolen IVF documents to fake a pregnancy in front of our family. She laughed and said I was too emotional to be a mom, but at the baby shower, I showed everyone her pharmacy receipt and the email from my clinic. Now she's hiding from the entire family. Infertility is one of those things you don't really talk about at family gatherings. It's too raw, too complicated, too painful. For 2 years, I carried that weight in silence, the hormone injections, the morning visits to the clinic before work, the blood tests that always came back with some new kind of disappointment. I had learned how to pretend everything was fine while sitting at the dinner table, smiling through questions about when I'd finally give my parents a grandchild. Every failed IVF cycle felt like a secret funeral I had to attend alone. My sister Layla, on the other hand, never had a filter. She's the kind of person who masks cruelty as humor, who's quick with a jab and even quicker with a laugh when someone calls her out. For most of our lives, I had learned to shrug it off, that was just Layla being Layla. But after my second failed cycle, she started making comments that went from mildly annoying to outright vile. "Maybe you're just too emotional to be a mom," she'd say with a smirk, usually in front of a full room. Sometimes she'd toss in a sarcastic, "Better you than me," when I mentioned a doctor's appointment. People laughed. They always did. And I told myself to let it go. I figured she didn't know how deep the knife was cutting. Then one day, I noticed something was missing. My fertility journal, the one I kept hidden in my bedroom drawer, the one I filled with every clinic appointment, every bit of progress, every failed round, was gone. I tore my apartment apart looking for it, convinced I had just misplaced it in a brain fog of hormones and stress. But deep down, something didn't sit right. That journal wasn't just paper. It was my lifeline. My history. My vulnerability, written in ink. 2 weeks later, Layla stood in our parents' living room, her hand resting lightly on her flat stomach, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. "I have news," she said dramatically. "I'm pregnant." The reaction was immediate. My mom cried. My dad cheered. Layla basked in it all like a celebrity walking a red carpet. She even joked that it must have been fate because it happened so fast. I clapped along like everyone else, but inside, I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Something was off. Layla had never wanted kids. She used to say babies were time-sucking little chaos bombs and that she preferred dogs and freedom. And now, she was suddenly the image of maternal bliss? She answered questions vaguely, brushed off any details, and got oddly defensive when I asked what clinic she was using or who her OBGYN was. I told myself not to spiral, not to make this about me, but I couldn't ignore the growing pit in my stomach. Something didn't add up. And in the back of my mind, one terrifying question had started to form: what if this pregnancy wasn't real? What if Layla wasn't just mocking me with words, but with something much worse? At first, I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. Maybe I was just projecting my pain onto Layla. Maybe her pregnancy really was a surprise blessing, and I was just too bitter to be happy for her. That's what I kept telling myself, until I started noticing the cracks. Whenever someone asked her basic questions, how far along she was, when the baby was due, what symptoms she'd had, her answers were either vague or flat-out inconsistent. She'd say she was 10 weeks one day, and then suddenly claim she had her 12-week scan the week before. She always had an excuse ready, brushing it off like she was too busy to keep track. But I'd been through this. I knew what real pregnancy looked like. I knew what it did to your body, your mind, your calendar. And what she was describing? It wasn't that. Still, I kept quiet. I didn't want to accuse her of anything without proof, even if my gut was practically screaming at me. But then, during a family get-together, she left me alone in her car while she ran into a bakery. And that's when I saw it, a crumpled paper bag from a local pharmacy stuffed under the passenger seat. I didn't mean to snoop, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a receipt. It was for a prescription of fertility medication. The exact same brand and dosage I had been using. At first, I was confused. Why would she be picking up Clomid? She was pregnant, right? Pregnant women don't take ovulation stimulants. And then it hit me like a freight train, she wasn't taking them. She had used my prescription. My exact meds. My name wasn't on the receipt, but everything else matched, the insurance info, the dosage, the timing. Suddenly, things snapped into focus. I drove home in a fog, my hands shaking the entire way. That night, I called my clinic and asked a question I never thought I'd say out loud. Has anyone else accessed my file? There was a pause on the other end. Then the receptionist, hesitant and clearly uncomfortable, asked, "Are you referring to your sister Layla?" My blood ran cold. She had walked into my clinic. She had pretended to be me. She had used my identity, my insurance, my trauma, all to build this elaborate lie. I was sick. Furious. Humiliated. How long had she been doing this? How much had she read in my private files? How far was she willing to go? I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at that receipt and the mess of thoughts racing through my mind. I kept thinking about all the times she laughed at me. All the times she told me I was too emotional or trying too hard. Meanwhile, she had been digging through my life, taking my story and dressing it up as her own. I wanted to scream. I wanted to confront her right then and there. But I didn't. Because something bigger was coming. Her baby shower. And I decided right then, if she wanted to steal my truth, I was going to steal back my voice. The invitations were gold foil printed, delivered in little boxes stuffed with fake flower petals. She hired an event planner. A photographer. A balloon arch that could probably be seen from space. Layla didn't just throw a baby shower, she orchestrated a spectacle. And everyone showed up. Friends, family, coworkers, all gathered to celebrate her miraculous pregnancy. The one she built out of my stolen pain. I almost didn't go. I sat in my car for 20 minutes outside the venue, folder in my lap, hands numb. But then I looked down at that envelope, the clinic letter, the pharmacy receipt, the email printout. And something in me settled. I didn't need revenge. I needed the truth to breathe. I needed her to stop walking around with my story like it was something she bought off a shelf. The moment I walked in, I felt the shift. Everyone was glowing with excitement, everyone except me. Layla was standing near the center of the room in a fitted white dress that hugged her body so tightly it was impossible not to notice the absence of a baby bump. But no one questioned it. They handed her gifts, congratulated her, snapped selfies while she made vague promises like, "Oh, we'll announce the name soon, it's a surprise." She saw me. Her smile faltered for half a second before it snapped back into place. She tilted her head, raised her glass in a smug little toast from across the room. I just nodded. Quiet. Waiting. I watched her for almost an hour. She floated through the crowd like a celebrity, all fake warmth and scripted lines. People kept asking about the baby, due dates, sonograms, morning sickness, and her answers were either oddly specific or frustratingly vague. She claimed she was 17 weeks along, but also said she hadn't picked a doctor yet because it's all just been happening so fast. At one point, she said she was taking prenatal yoga classes on Mondays and Thursdays, then 5 minutes later said she was booked on Thursdays for her birthing class. No one seemed to notice, or maybe they didn't care. But I noticed everything. Every slip. Every stutter. Every panicked glance when someone asked a question she hadn't rehearsed. Finally, they brought out the cake, 3 tiers, pink velvet with tiny golden baby shoes on top. Layla stepped forward, holding a microphone like she was about to accept an award. She thanked everyone for coming, told some rehearsed story about a dream she had where the baby whispered her name from the womb, and made a joke about how being pregnant made her crave attention more than ice cream. That's when I moved. I didn't interrupt her. I just started handing out copies of the folder. To my aunt. To my uncle. To her fiancé. To our mother. No words yet, just paper. The weight of truth passed hand to hand. Then I spoke. There is no baby. The room stopped. She used my medical file. She went to my clinic, under my name, and faked everything you've been celebrating. The medication she picked up was part of my IVF protocol. She's never even been a patient there. I have the email from the clinic confirming it. Silence. No gasps. Just a thick, suffocating stillness. Layla's face twisted. She's making this up. She's jealous. She's always wanted to be the center of attention. She's mad that Mad that you what? I said. My voice was calm, but my hands were trembling. That you laughed at my pain? That you stole it? That you read my records and thought they'd make a great costume for your pity party? Her fiancé held the documents in his hands, eyes darting across the text. He didn't say a word. Just stepped slightly back from her, like he was realizing he didn't know the woman he was about to marry. Layla looked around for support, but the room wasn't playing along anymore. People were frozen. Uncomfortable. Embarrassed. Some looked away. Some just stared at her like they were seeing her for the first time. And that's when Layla broke. She threw the mic down, screamed something incoherent, and stormed out of the room so fast she nearly tripped over the gift table. Her fiancé followed, not to comfort her, but to demand answers. The door slammed behind them. I stayed for another minute. Just long enough to look at my mother, who was still staring at the folder in her lap, her expression hollow. She didn't look at me. She didn't say a word. I walked out, not triumphant, just done. The air outside felt cleaner, colder, real. I hadn't planned what I would say, hadn't rehearsed the timing. But I knew that if I hadn't done it then, I never would have gotten my voice back. And as I stood in the parking lot, breathing deep for the first time in weeks, I realized something. Layla had spent months building a lie around my grief. But in the end, it only took the truth, and 10 pages of paper, to bring it all crashing down. I thought exposing Layla would bring me some kind of release, like flipping a switch. That the weight I'd been carrying would just evaporate once everyone knew the truth. But that's not how it works. The truth doesn't set you free. It just burns everything down and leaves you standing in the smoke, wondering what's left. The day after the baby shower, I didn't get out of bed. Not out of regret, I don't regret what I did, but because I felt hollow. Like someone had opened me up, scraped out all the grief and anger and shock, and left nothing behind. My phone buzzed non-stop, messages from family, old college friends, coworkers who'd seen the video someone posted to Instagram before it was deleted. Some people called me brave. Some just asked if it was real. One even said, "Damn, you really blew up her life, huh?" Yeah. I guess I did. But Layla blew mine up first, slowly, quietly, over months. And no one noticed. No one saw me disintegrate under the weight of failed IVF cycles and emotional isolation. But now that I stood up for myself, Now that I dared to show people what she'd done? Now they had opinions. Layla vanished. Literally. By that night, her social media accounts were gone. She wasn't answering calls. She didn't go home. Her fiancé, or ex-fiancé, I guess, texted me the next morning. Just 4 words, "I'm so sorry." I didn't answer. What was I supposed to say? Yeah, same? I found out later from my cousin that he'd confronted her in the parking lot after the baby shower. He looked her dead in the face and asked her if any of it had been real. And all she did was cry and say she didn't mean to hurt anyone. That was her entire defense. Not denial. Not remorse. Just deflection. Like she'd accidentally tripped into a massive, calculated fraud. Like faking a pregnancy with your sister's stolen IVF documents was a hoaxy. My parents didn't call me for 5 days. Not a text. Not a check-in. Just silence. When they finally did reach out, it was my mom. Her voice cracked before she even got my name out. She told me she didn't know what to say, that she felt ashamed, confused, and heartbroken. And I believed her. I could hear it in her voice, the weight of realizing she had wrapped all her hope around a lie. She said she was sorry. Over and over. She even asked me if there was anything she could do to make it right. And that's when it hit me, there isn't a way to make something like this right. Not really. You can't unbelieve someone. You can't rewind time and make people see you clearly the first time around. They chose her. They saw her glowing in white and handed her all the love and support I used to dream about. And even if they feel sorry now, even if they believe me now, that part doesn't magically disappear. I didn't scream at my mom. I didn't hang up. But I also didn't say, "It's okay." Because it's not okay. I told her the truth, you all believed the performance because it was easier than sitting with my pain. You wanted a happy ending, even if it came at my expense. She didn't argue. And that silence? That moment where she had no defense? It was the most honest part of our relationship in years. As for Layla, I have no idea where she is now. Some say she moved to Arizona with a friend. Others think she checked herself into some kind of wellness retreat. I don't know, and I'm not chasing her down for answers. I'm done handing her space in my mind that she doesn't deserve. What she did wasn't just petty or attention-seeking. It was calculated. Violating. She sat in a clinic pretending to be me, read my private charts, took prescriptions written for my body, and used them to build a story about herself. A story people cheered for. A story I never got. She mocked my grief, not once, not in passing, but over and over again. She weaponized my infertility. And when the truth came out, she didn't apologize. She ran. The truth is, this whole thing cracked something wide open in me. I had spent so long trying to be the cool infertile girl, the one who smiled through brunch, brought wine to baby showers, laughed off awkward questions about when it's my turn. I didn't want to make people uncomfortable with my pain. I didn't want to be that woman, bitter, broken, inconvenient. But I was that woman. I am that woman. And now? I don't care if that makes people squirm. Because for the first time in years, I chose me. I stopped hiding. I stopped protecting people who didn't protect me. And that doesn't fix everything. I still cry in the shower, I still hesitate before opening Instagram, and I still flinch every time a coworker announces their pregnancy with glitter and tears. But I don't feel small anymore. I feel angry. I feel raw. I feel real. And that's something Layla never was. I don't know what comes next. I might try another round of IVF. I might adopt. I might take a break. But whatever happens, it'll be my story this time. Not something stolen. Not something repackaged. Just mine.